Okay, let's just lay it out there. Let's just drape it across the table. It's not something you expect to see in Washington State. A tornado confirmed, and there is damage. Thanks so much for watching, folks. I'm Reynolds Wolf.
And I'm Vivian Brown. It's Friday, October 24th, and the tornado formed in the Portland, Oregon area in Washington State, really, but it was near the Oregon border. Take a look at some of this video. You can see the beginnings of this ominous-looking large gray cloud and a little funnel kind of peeking out from the base of that cloud, and it was that condensation funnel that we saw in the sky but didn't see on the ground. But on the ground we did see some swirling debris, so we knew there was a tornado in the area. But again, anytime you see a cloud like this and certainly a little funnel sticking out, then you want to run for cover. That tornado tore right through the middle of Main Street in Longview, Washington, and as you can imagine, not something that town is used to seeing. KGW-TV's Nina Melhoff shows us some of the damage.
A lot of damage still on the ground here in Longview, Washington. Take a look. This is some of the most visual representation of what happened yesterday afternoon. This cinder block wall at this towing company was no match for this tornado. It brought down tons of bricks right down on top of one of their towing vehicles and just made a complete mess of their backyard here. Luckily, nobody was hurt in the city. No employees in this building were hurt, but boy, were they sure freaked out when this EF-1 tornado came right over the top of their building. The National Weather Service says there were 110-mile-per-hour winds. This thing covered almost a mile and a half, and people could see the funnel forming in the dark sky. They got their cell phone cameras out and started taking pictures of it. All of a sudden, debris, roofing, garbage cans, even a huge trampoline, all tossed in the air. At least 8 buildings were damaged and a number of homes and trees were uprooted. Now, also, the National Weather Service is here on the ground surveying all this damage today. They say the last time this happened in Washington, it was down in Vancouver in 1972. So this is obviously very rare, and it really came out of nowhere. We've had a few days of rain and some higher winds gusting in the 40-50-mile-per-hour range, but nothing like this. Luckily, no one was hurt. Back to you.
Okay, America. My homie and yours, Dr. Greg Postel. We're talking about this tornado. Greg, help me here. If this is taking place in Nebraska or in the Dakotas, probably not a big story.
They're used to it.
Yeah.
And as you just heard, they're not used to it in Washington. And, you know, they see something that's out of the clouds and thinking, oh, my goodness, what is that? Well, the question is, what is that? Because you might think, aha, it's a funnel, right? It's not a tornado. But you don't know that. The circulation may, in fact, be on the ground. And in this case, it likely was. So it's actually probably a tornado in progress, even though if it just looks like a little funnel sticking out of a cloud.
So the key thing to look for is the debris. So even if the condensation funnel doesn't make contact with the earth, it's still, the winds can make contact.
In fact, that's how I saw my first tornado. It was a funnel like that, but it was actually doing some damage on the ground. Kind of like this one. This is what we see here. You know, right? Where's the tornado? Right, you don't see it,
yeah.
But it's actually there. The circulation is there. What's happened is inside of that column, the tornado is like a tube of low pressure, and what's happened is the pressures haven't come down low enough in the middle of it, right up in there, and meaning the temperature hasn't come down low enough to condense out the water vapor and make a cloud. So we have the tornado, just not the cloud.
Okay, so if this happens in a cornfield, say in Iowa, it's freshly plowed, you get plenty of loose dirt, picks it up easily. We can see it plain as day.
Right.
But in this industrial area where we had this damage, not quite as easy, harder to see.
And more dangerous. I mean, look,
Yeah.
there's a lot of flying debris there, and that's the tricky part. You don't know what's out there. If you're driving around, you're thinking, oh my gosh, there's a dumpster flying by.
Sure.
That could really be a problem. And unfortunately, it did do some damage, but fortunately, not significant human, I guess, impacts.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, and the true testament, do you think, of how quickly these things can develop, even when we don't expect them?
Right.
It shows you there's always a wild card when it comes to forecasting, comes to weather.
Yeah, and don't believe your eyes, I guess, in a sense, right? Because your eyes might be telling you there's not a tornado in some sense, but there is one on the ground.
Fair enough. All right. Always good information. Thanks so much. Vivian, let's send it back to you.
All right. Great explanation and the expertise there. Can you imagine just seeing a toaster just flying by your head? Okay, it was in Longview, Washington, right here on the Oregon border that we had that tornado yesterday. The best news of all, though, is that there were no injuries and certainly no fatalities. Here is the latest information on that tornado that we were watching yesterday in the Pacific Northwest. So let's see what's going on right now in the area, because it's pretty quiet. This is the current radar. It doesn't show any returns at all over Washington State and much of northern Oregon, but southern Oregon, that's where we're picking up the moisture coming in across the Medford area and kind of flowing into this region.